This machine was created to compete. The Atlas Sewing Centers was a sort of a chain of stores, and they were set up to compete with people like Singer. And so they would go to, again, they would go to Japan and find companies like Janome who would make the machines for them. And when I first saw this machine, I thought, what a cool time capsule from the 50s. This was made in around 1957 or so, and it shows. It's done in a sort of a warm pink color, almost like a cosmetic pink. And it's got tons of chrome. It's very stylized. It looks very much like a 57 Cadillac, I like to think. And from this time period, you'll also see sewing machines in turquoise, right, and other colors from that era. It's a really powerful machine. And if you only have one sewing machine, I usually tell people, get a straight stitch and zigzag capable machine. On the other hand, if you have more than one, or you want a machine that has a dedicated straight stitch mechanism, then this would be a great addition to your sewing room or sewing collection. And that's important because as you expand the pieces of equipment that you use for sewing, you'll find that a machine that's dedicated only to straight stitches gives you slightly, and this is subjective, but slightly straighter stitches. If you have a zigzag machine, I sell zigzag machines all the time, and they make great straight stitches. So I don't want to suggest that a zigzag machine can't do it, but some people, I've talked to a lot of sewers over the years doing this, and many of them tell me they like to have both a machine that does zigzag and one that's straight stitch dedicated. So if you're one of those, this could be a great machine for you. The machine has a number of features when you think about the fact that it's a straight stitch only. Of course, it has stitch length control, and that's adjusted here on the front. I've got it set up for a long stitch now, and I've been doing some testing. I always test the machines out before I put them up on Craigslist, but I'm going to demonstrate it for you here. And then if I want to go, of course, go in reverse, I come up, and then that's my basic control. One of the deluxe features, if you will, on this machine is that it had 2-level feed dog drop. For those of you who like to do free motion quilting or just some free motion work, you can even darn, this has 2 levels. So I can drop my feed dogs, I can come down once to silk. So if you work with chiffons and silks and you want those feed dogs to be a little more gentle on your fabric, you can lower it here. And then of course, if you swing it all the way around, it drops them entirely for free motion work. Most of you will keep it in the normal position. But this mechanism has been cleaned and lubricated. I find that on many, not all, many vintage machines, people never used this mechanism, and sometimes they get a little sticky. So let's see, the bobbin winder is here on the front, and it's spring loaded. So when you put your bobbin on, you load your thread spool here, and then you simply push down, and then there's a way to, of course, disengage the needle, and you wind your bobbin. Let's see, it has a built-in light, which is over here on the end, which would show up better if I were doing this video in the evening. But it's a wonderful machine, and aesthetically, it's one of the few pink machines. You will occasionally see a few Brother machines. They were trying to introduce the name Brother in the 50s, but it was a slow process of trying to get people to know that name. But usually, if you see a pink machine at all that is vintage, it will either say Atlas or Brother on it. That's been my experience. And it even has a matching pink foot pedal, which is pretty cool. But anyway, the main reason I wanted to make the video, in addition to giving you a little backstory on the machine, was so that you could actually watch it sew. And I'm going to sew a variety of materials and kind of show you what the machine is really capable of. So I'll go ahead and start. I already have my fabric in. And I'm doing just a long straight stitch, back tacking. Again, it's direct feed like most machines from this period, so you can go back. And then I'm going to come back over here, and I think I'll shorten my stitch length. Come down here a little bit, shorten the stitch length so you can also do those smaller stitches. Some of you will use these really short stitches sometimes when you're sewing. You can do it short stitches for knits. Some of you who quilt will actually do this. And many of the people who buy machines from me are going to get them because they want to sew heavy fabrics. And again, you can sew lightweight stuff on this machine all day long, But unlike the new plastic machines that people have had unhappy experiences with, this machine will sew heavyweight stuff. It was designed to do that. So let me take this out. And I'll show you, if you look at what you're seeing here, the blue, I've got the top thread is blue, and then I was sewing on the other side. The bottom thread is white. I'll just turn it over and you can see quality is really just a beautiful stitch, right? And again, it was made in Japan. Many of these companies would go on into the car industry. Toyota was one of the companies that did this kind of work, and they got their start with sewing machines and went on for cars. But again, the Brother name is very well known now. It was not back in the 50s. And so they made machines. You just didn't see their name on them. They were doing a lot of private labeling. Atlas, again, was a distribution center. You could go there and learn how to sew, and you could buy sewing machines there. Let's see, let's do some heavyweight fabric. I'm going to take, this is 2 layers of a pretty heavyweight upholstery fabric, very thick and fluffy. And I'm using a size 16 needle. This machine will take, of course, smaller needles and up to size 18. I use 16s because, again, I'm sewing, sometimes some pretty heavyweight fabric, because I just find that a lot of people, even if you have modern machines and you love some of the features of new computer machines, I find that a lot of sewers want at least one vintage machine in their sewing stall that they can use. And I'm even sewing fairly fast on this. I could go faster, but again, as I mentioned in other videos, I really don't want to break my needle. And let's put my foot down here. We'll come back, get our stitch length long again. And like I say, it feeds very strong feed dogs on this machine. And because this fabric has sort of a texture to it, it's sort of hard to see the stitches sometimes, but they're very strong. Maybe it actually shows a little bit better on the back. You can see just beautiful. And I'm going to fold it over again, and we'll get 4 layers. And that's a pretty substantial request to make of most machines, but I think this machine will handle it just fine. And I'm sewing through 4 layers of it, and it's doing just fine. Again, I'm going to keep my speed slower. The machine is willing to go faster, but I don't really want my needle to break, and that would be silly. And it's really not needed. But again, it does such a beautiful job, and it's a shame that the new machines just don't do this. New computer machines will offer features to you, but they are made much more cheaply, and they're not willing to do that. So here again, the blue, like I say, when you sew over this undulating fabric, it makes the blue stitch look a little funny. But again, very, very strong. If you have upholstery projects, these are great machines for that. But again, you can do lightweight stuff as well. Now, I'm going to sew. Been doing this lately in my videos. I've got a cargo pant, part of it, and it's got the pocket and the flap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, and this time I'm actually been sewing through several layers. I'm going to double it. So now I have 2 layers of the pant. I have 2 layers of seams, and I'm going to go across this. I did it earlier on a machine with magenta, so I changed this machine's got blue thread, so you know which seam this one is. And let's see what it has to say when I run this through. Let's see here. So if you look, And one of the things you always want to look at here is when you're sewing from fabric to seams, and I've got 2 layers of this seam, you want to make sure that your stitches stay straight and that you don't lose tension, that your tension doesn't get screwed up. And vintage machines, you can see it even here on the back with the white thread, they just do a beautiful job. And some new machines will do this for you, but many of the new cheaper ones won't do it. They just can't handle it. And that's a pretty neat feature, and it shows the strength of the engineering that they had into these machines. And then lastly, I'm going to do some garment leather. You could use a roller foot if you wanted to, and sometimes you will want a roller foot, particularly with leather, but this one I believe will feed through just fine. It is a garment weight leather, and what you'll find is that with garment weight leather, as long as it's flexible, something you might have for a wallet, it's not stiff like a belt. This type of leather can be sewn with a vintage sewing machine that was home grade, domestic grade, just fine. Just make sure that it's very pliable, right? If you can wiggle the leather like this, and it's something you might hold in your hand that was used to make a wallet, you're going to be fine. Just don't use these machines for sewing belts and saddles. They'll complain if you try to do that. They're not meant for it. So let me get set up here for the leather, and we'll see how she does. Okay, so I've got my leather set up in place here, and what you'll find, and I've already done some testing on leather on the right, so on the left side is where we'll make these new stitches that I'm going to show you that I'm actually making for you now. And one of the things to think about with machines is you have several things going on with a sewing machine. You have the tension and the thickness of the thread. You have the amount of pressure that is on the presser foot, and there's a spring behind this bar that affects that. And then you also have the space between the foot and the bed of the machine. And all of those things come together to either give you successful sewing or not. And you'll notice this when you sew something thick. So when I was sewing that upholstery fabric earlier, I was able to get it under the foot. If you try to get something thicker and it won't fit under the foot, then the machine will fight you, not because it's weak, but because it just can't swallow that much fabric in that amount of time. It needs more space to work with. So fortunately, many of these machines have a wonderful clearance under their feet, and you just saw I've got 4 layers of this. But let's do some of the leather, and you'll see you will see how it handles it. Let me get my thread tails here. And back tacking. And so I'm going to come back and I'll shorten the stitch length so you can see the variety. With leather, you don't want your stitches too short because it hurts the integrity of your seam. Okay, so now what you'll see here, these are the 2 rows I just made with the blue thread. Here's the long stitch, and then here's the shorter one. And then of course here's the white. The suede side on the other side, it doesn't show up as well, but again, it's beautifully balanced. And I just went through quite a variety. I've got lightweight, heavyweight fabric, and then garment leather. So again, this machine, it comes with a pink and black case that coordinates with the machine. And the machine's been gone through. You'll see all those details on the post. So if you love some of the aesthetic of the fun colors and design of the 50s, this one is a wonderful time capsule for the period. It is based, again, on Class 15 bobbins and sewing systems, and there's a lot of Singer engineering that the Japanese sort of took and ran with and made improvements on. So at the heart of this machine, its original bobbin system was created by Singer. So it was very solid to begin with, and they took over some expired patents, and then they ran with it. And this is how companies like Brother and other companies like Janome got into the United States. They started making machines, but under other names. So when you see the name Atlas, don't let that throw you off, because this was the company that actually sold it in much the same way that Kenmore was a brand that Sears sold, and of course it was made by Japanese companies after a certain year. So if you have questions, email me, or if you want to set up a time to come and take a look at the Atlas, and I'd be happy to show it to you and let you try it out for yourself. Thanks.